are live. Welcome to the show, everybody. Well, it's another week, another weird time slip where it feels like the Trump administration has crammed enough action into 7 days to keep the entire news media spinning for about a year. The online left is losing it. Trump's negotiation tactics seem to be working, and the Department of the Interior is already moving to make America energy secure again. Today, we will also ask the questions, is DOGE breaking Washington or fixing it? Is there a difference? Can they do it faster? And isn't it really telling how panicked all the right people are about a simple little audit? We're going to look at all of this and more in episode 482 of the In the Tank podcast. Hit it, Andy.
We won't rest. We won't rest. We won't rest. We won't.
Thank you. That wasn't an awkward chant at all. All right. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea Lueken, your new host. And today, as usual, we've got Jim Lakely, Vice President of the Heartland Institute. Jim, how are you surviving up there in Chirac?
We're doing fine. Actually, we had an ice storm up here in northern Illinois today, but the sun is out. It's probably going to melt it all. And yeah, we've had actually a very weird winter. I haven't used my snowblower once. I don't think we've had more than, I think the most snow we had in one snowfall was 1.5 inches. And it's just been really weird. So I am trying to stay warm. And I hope everybody liked the little addition to our theme drop on that one with Chuck Schumer. That was just so cringe. I had to share.
Today, we're also joined by our special guest, Phil Kerpen, President of the American Commitment and the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, both of which are great free market organizations. Welcome to the show, Phil. We've got a little bit of a delay, I think.
I heard you say my name,
Phil,
and
you're
I heard
muted.
It glitch up. So I don't know if you asked me a question or not.
I was just saying, welcome to the show.
Do I need to do something?
No, I think you're going to be good. We'll try to go through it. Yeah, we've had some.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I will just warn the audience now. This has been, and I'm going to actually blame Elon Musk and DOGE. We're not spending enough government money apparently on secure internet connections, mouses that don't fail, computers that don't crash, and we've had all that happen to everybody on this stream in the last hour and a half. So bear with us if there's a couple of technical glitches.
Come on, man.
Yep. Well, that was a great introduction by Cheeseburger Chuck, the new face of the Democratic Party.
Yes, there you got it. We're having a little bit of a delay, I think, with our responses here. But as long as we're hanging out here, I'm going to tell the audience before we get started, if you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like the video. And remember that sharing it helps us to break through some of YouTube's suppression. Even just leaving a comment really helps too. Why not both? If you're an audio listener, you can really help us out by leaving a nice review. So thank you to our audience for being here. It's great to see everybody. I'm glancing over at the comment section, and everyone seems to be quite international, as often is the case for our shows. And we are so happy to have all of you here. Well, let's get right into it. Our first segment that we have put together here is going to take a little bit of a look at the response that the left is having, particularly online. They're not doing well. They're having a moment, that's for sure. They've been absolutely losing it since Trump was inaugurated in particular. And now we're going to look at how the left copes with the new Trump administration. And it seems to be separating into kind of one of three categories. Quiet acceptance paired with maybe a little bit of mild depression, which seems to be the bulk of normal Democrats right now. The second would be entering the spin cycle, trying to exaggerate everything that Trump does. And that seems to be the media and Democrat politician response, or melting down into total lunacy, which is the most fun one. And ground zero for the third kind should surprise absolutely no one, and that is Reddit. I'm pretty familiar with the site. I used to be very active on a long-killed subreddit called r/thedonald. And I will say it has been interesting the last few days, seeing the website admins actually suddenly crack down on threats of violence coming from the left. That used to not really be the case, but I guess it's gotten to a pitch that they actually can't ignore it anymore. So this post on the Federalist by ex-user Reddit Lies, who's a very fun account, by the way, he has this to say. In the past several weeks following the Republicans' election win, social media site Reddit has seen an unprecedented surge in violent political content and rhetoric. While calls for violence and doxing are not in any way new to Reddit, the scale and intensity of its current discourse marks a troubling escalation, especially regarding political extremism. Redditors are no longer merely engaging in spicy online political debate. They are openly advocating for the assassination of public figures and the overthrow of the federal government. The situation on the site has grown so severe that it drew the attention of the Department of Justice, which appears to have pressured Reddit to take action. In response, Reddit issued a 3-day temporary ban to one of its largest subreddits, drastically underscoring the gravity of the situation on its platform. So this article has a whole bunch of screenshots from various Reddit users calling for violence against the president, violence against Elon Musk. He used to be a very popular figure on Reddit, and that changed very, very quickly once he came out in support of Trump. So it's going a little bit crazy there. And from a free market perspective, Phil, I mean, obviously social media companies like Reddit and Twitter are private companies, right? But these calls to violence and attempting to coordinate violence on the platform, especially when it comes to like a protest that were supposed to happen on the 5th, which was yesterday, which I don't think they ended up happening, not to the extent that they had intended for them to. It seems like something that DOJ would be interested in, or is this kind of a government overstep to have the government come onto a platform like this and say, no, you got to do something about these comments that they're making?
Well, I know, we all have free speech, and this is actually quite ironic that this is happening on Reddit after, we experienced 4 years of a Biden administration that was coordinating without any apology and any embarrassment with Twitter when it was Twitter before it was bought by Elon Musk, and cooperating with the suppression of nonviolent speech, just speech that criticized the government. And so, that was routine, that our government under President Biden was coordinating the suppression of speech, again, against anybody on the right or anybody critical of the administration and its policies. This is something quite different because, making open threats against people, saying you're going to kill them, doxing them, those are actual crimes. Those are against the law. That's quite a different category of something. And frankly, I'm actually surprised Reddit even cooperated with the Department of Justice on this. Reddit, like you, Linnea, I used to go over to Reddit a lot more often back in the day than I do these days. Mostly now I'm watching the show Severance, and so I'll go over there to the Severance subreddit and just read other people's theories on what's going on, what they think's going on in the show, and that's kind of fun and interesting. But for the most part, Reddit has been a hard leftist playground if and when it comes to political discussions and when it comes to like climate change and things like that. It's very much dominated by the left. So I'm actually surprised that I'm sure Reddit, the people who run Reddit, I would imagine they consider themselves part of the resistance, right? They probably did in the first go round against Trump. I'm sure they consider themselves part of the resistance now. But for them to see the gravity of this situation, that, you can't be making threats against the president of the United States, against Elon Musk, doxing the, I think there was like, I think what Elon Musk calls it, he's learned how to weaponize autism. And so the people that he brought in to do the programming for DOGE so that they could go through all these databases and find the waste, fraud, and abuse are just kids, 19, 20 years old who are autistic, but really great at writing algorithms and programs to root out these sorts of things. I mean, it's like, and yet people on the left, I'm sure at Reddit, maybe not at Reddit, but in places, their personal information has been published online as a threat. They want to punish these kids for frankly doing one of the greatest public services for the American people in decades.
Oh yeah, and I mean, Reddit tolerates some conservative subreddits for a certain amount of time, so long as they adhere to very, very strict, very, very restrictive kind of like topic censorship. You can't go too far in disagreeing with, say, like the transgender issue. You can't go too far in talking about any kind of like election denial stuff is what they would label it as. But now, of course, there were several months where where the preponderance of posts that were on Our Politics were basically election denial against Trump's election this time around, and Reddit did not take those down because like left-wing stuff on Reddit is okay. And to a certain extent, Reddit's allowed to just be a lefty platform. I mean, Tumblr was basically just a lefty platform. That's okay, actually. It sucks because it used to be a pretty good website, but it's okay in terms of the free market or like the private company perspective. What's really not okay are the actual crimes that people have been getting away with on there for a long time, and it seems that only now is the government cracking down on it. Of course, because now it's that the Trump administration is in charge and they have a mandate on the DOJ to actually follow up on crime, which is just crazy, right?
Right. Yeah, and if you don't punish it, if you release the threat of punishment, you're going to get more of it. I mean, again, just to kind of apply that to what was happening on just Twitter with the Biden administration and the way the Biden administration was coordinating with Twitter to suppress speech or to punish people. It's supposed to have a chilling effect. And hopefully, at least the announcement of the DOJ is going to be investigating these very credible and dangerous actual threats of death and violence against political opponents will have a positive chilling effect, and that stuff will stop, or at least slow down.
Yeah, I saw a quote a while back. I don't know who said it, but it was something along the lines of, when you have spent a long time in a position of special treatment, being treated the same as everybody else feels like oppression. And
Right.
that certainly seems to be what's going on with Reddit. And obviously, most of this is online, right? As one of our users or one of our viewers just pointed out, there have been 2 attempted assassination, attempts on President Trump.
We forget.
Redditors in general tend to have what I would call low emotional continence. But these people really do exist out there, right? It's not like they just live online, although you could argue that some of them do kind of just live online. But it feels like it took a little bit longer after this time that Trump was elected for all of these calls to violence and protests to start up. It seems like they were kind of taken by genuine surprise this time around, and they didn't quite know how to coordinate what they wanted to do, if there is coordination going on here, which I think to a certain extent there is. Is this just the normal way of things now, Jim? Are we just going to see every single time a new Republican president is in office that there's huge violent coordination from the left to, I don't know, protests at least?
I actually don't. I was going to save this for when we got to the last the main topic there on DOGE goes to Washington. But I don't think, because in that clip that I showed with Schumer at the beginning of our after our intro video there, the little addition to that, which is kind of fun to think of one every week. They were basically trying to get the 2020 band back together, right? But I don't think the call to the streets is going to work this time. I don't think people are going to march and riot over the gutting of USAID, which is an agency most people hadn't even heard about and had no idea existed until about 20 minutes ago. cops are hunting and killing black people. As malicious and false as that is, it's easy to understand how that could stir passions and lead to the burning of cities, right? But leftist members of Congress, like at this rally in front of the State Department the other day, they can host as many of these kind of media events as they want, calling for war. They called for revolution. They called Elon Musk well, if you use this word, YouTube doesn't like it. They called him a mid-century German. We'll put it that way. So, but cities around the country are not going to be shut down. Yeah, in fact, one of the people at that rally said, "Shut this city down," meaning Washington D.C. To which I say,
yes,
okay, I'm listening. That'd be great. I don't think she means it the way I mean it, but but cities across the country are not going to be shut down and set on fire because Elon Musk and Donald Trump are not allowing hundreds of millions of tax dollars to flow to shadowy non-government organizations to pay for gay comic books in Peru or fuel propaganda outlets like Politico.
Save some of that because we've got a good list of some of those.
All right, we got
that our tax dollars have been.
I will save that. I will save that, but I'll just say that I think a lot of people on the left, as you said, don't really understand what's happened. They still don't understand why Donald Trump was elected in November. And they don't seem to have their finger on the pulse of the American people and its culture and their thinking right now. The usual strategy of ginning up fake outrage and calling people names and saying that people are going to die and that stuff is done. The American people are done with that. They're not listening. These people on the left and on Reddit and everywhere else are screaming their lungs out. And the American people have tuned it out. It's not working anymore. That stuff is not moving our culture or our politics anymore.
All right, I'm going to check in on our guests, see if we've figured that out yet. Andy, how's it looking?
Not looking good just yet.
Okay, not good. All right, so we'll move on to the next topic, but we'll try to go a little bit slow. So we might go a little bit long today just so that our guests can chat with us a bit. As you guys noticed, Chris is not here this week. He had a lot to do, so we released him from his pact here. Okay, so topic number 2, Trump's negotiation tactics actually seem to be working. I think one of the most surprising things for me in the first Trump administration was how good he was with international negotiations and relationships with very difficult people. It came in a form that was, I think, very baffling to a lot of the, so-called experts, these people who have been dealing with foreign relations for decades and watching, basically America get shafted every opportunity. All of a sudden, Trump comes in and he goes, guess what? North Korea and Iran, our nuclear button works, and all of a sudden we've got talks. And it seems to me that he's doing it once again. I saw articles all over the place making fun of Trump for threatening Canada and Mexico with tariffs in order to get them to help us secure the border. But I mean, what we have now from Breitbart, I have this article that we pulled up. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has caved to President Donald Trump's demands to crack down on fentanyl trafficking and to reinforce the Canada-U.S. border after threatening retaliatory tariffs in response to Trump's. In his country's fight against drug trafficking, Trudeau added that the cartels will be designated as terrorists, the border will be under 24/7 watch, and a Canada-U.S. joint strike force will be launched to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. And then from military.com regarding Mexico, we have Trump saying, I look forward to participating in negotiations with the Mexican president as we attempt to achieve a deal. Trump said the talks would be headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, I cannot pronounce words today, okay, our Secretary of Commerce nominee, and high-level representatives of Mexico. And what came of that, basically, is that the Mexican president is now going to reinforce the border with 10,000 members of her country's National Guard, and we are going to help stop trafficking weapons into Mexico. And then even better, this is my third one to throw at you guys, Trump vaguely threatened to, have like a military invasion of Panama. So, and everyone said that that was a terrible thing to threaten, that he shouldn't do that and that's not going to work. And then all of a sudden here from American Conservative, Molino's government certainly seems to be taking the Trump administration's warning seriously. Following his meeting with Rubio, Molino declared that Panama would now not renew the 2017 MOU to join China's Belt and Road Initiative, and suggested he might prematurely end the current agreement with Beijing. And that's just a handful of examples of this. It's pretty crazy. The Panama thing is especially interesting because the canal has been basically under Chinese control increasingly over the last couple of years. It was becoming very alarming to a lot of our security professionals, the same ones who say that Trump's style does not work, but clearly it's doing something. Jim, is it just because Trump's more like they actually think that he might do what he threatens that he's going to do? It's kind of shocking that the same international leaders who will call him a buffoon, they'll say that he doesn't know what he's talking about, that they're just going to ignore him. All of a sudden, they're like, "Yes, sir," as soon as he kind of glares at them a little bit.
Well, I was thinking of the lyrics. The lyrics from an old Sade song popped into my head this morning, actually, as I was thinking about what we're going to talk about today on the podcast. And it's "Every day is Christmas and every night is New Year's Eve." That is what it feels like right now in the Trump presidency. And it's really remarkable what you can accomplish if you're an American president who knows the position of power the United States is in and uses just a little smidge of it for the better interests of the United States, and not even really use it, just threaten to use it or talk about using the power that we have economically, diplomatically, and everything is of the threat, of course, military. Now we were not going to invade. I don't think we were going to invade Panama. That was the last thing, if ever, even on the list. But one of the advantages of Donald Trump as a negotiator for the United States of America is that, well, frankly, I think a lot of the world's a little scared of him. He doesn't talk like other global leaders. His agenda is not that of every other global leader. He's not interested in the WEF and what they want to do. He's not interested in fighting climate change and destroying our economy. He's not interested in any of that stuff. And he's actually interested in national sovereignty and an immigration system and policies that actually make sense and have been, pretty much the rule of how we lived our lives for almost all of the 20th century, but seemingly none of the 21st century. And he wants to set policies that make sense, and including in the Panama Canal. He is right when he says that Jimmy Carter giving the Panama Canal to Panama with the intent that would make the United States look better in Central America, that we were, something that we bought, that the United States paid for with great amounts of treasure and blood. 1,000 or more Americans died digging that thing and making one of the great wonders in the history of Western civilization, which is that Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter just gave it to Panama, who then started to cut what they thought were better deals. Instead of with the United States, China. We can cut a deal with China. Again, American weakness is what caused this problem in the first place. And it literally took a week of Donald Trump showing just a smidgen of strength and rightly pointing out that it's the United States that has a special relationship with the Panama Canal. And so he got a better deal. I believe part of that deal is that all American military, Navy ships pass for free. I bet we didn't know that the United States Navy was paying for passage through the Panama Canal until, I guess, yesterday, when that policy was revoked. These are good things. And again, even with the threats of tariffs to Canada and Mexico, I was having arguments with, good friends of mine, good rock rib conservatives, people on the right, libertarians, and they were apoplectic about the threats of tariffs. This is terrible. Tariffs are bad, 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 bad. This is what Milton Friedman said about tariffs. It's terrible. But look, we live in a world of tariffs, and unconditional surrender on the part of the United States in trade policy doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, it gets you where we are now, where we have enormous trade deficits with China. And frankly, this whole tariffs discussion, this has really been should be educational for a lot of people. Did you know that the tariffs on dairy products, that being milk, cheese, milk and cheese, for instance, into Canada from the United States, is like 230% tariff. So the people of Canada are robbed of the wonderful, the wonders of Wisconsin cheese because of the 230% tariff on it. So people act like, only the United States is acting badly when it comes to tariffs. But instead, I cautioned my friends, and it was funny how quickly this actually turned out to be true. I said, look, yeah, I'm not a big fan of tariffs. It's a negotiating tactic. You guys act like he didn't write a book called The Art of the Deal. He lives for this stuff. This is what he does for fun. And so he was using tariffs as a negotiating tactic so that he has leverage to get what he wants. And he got what he wants on the border, on the northern border and the southern border. He got exactly what he wanted, which is basically the mirror of his own tough border policy. That's a pretty good accomplishment, if you ask me. And was anybody damaged by any new tariffs? No. And what I love about it is he says, all right, we'll take that tariff stuff off, but for 30 days, we'll be keeping an eye out. Make sure you're still doing good. So there's going to be accountability for this deal that he made too. It's brilliant. This is so great. This is very pro-American. And it's very much something that we have not seen really a president do and use his power in these good ways for the benefit of the American people in a very, very, very long time. Maybe even you have to go back to Reagan to have a president who was so unapologetically strong with American policy in order to benefit America and not necessarily everybody else in the world and us second.
As a bit of an aside, our good friend down in Argentina has followed Trump's lead, and Argentina has also now withdrawn from the World Health Organization, as we talked about last week. My hope is that this causes major shakeups, maybe even a little bit of a domino effect, with other countries also withdrawing, especially those that are interested in national sovereignty. So it's, yeah, I mean, right now, I have the same kind of conversations going on with my friends, Jim, who are good, solid libertarian or conservatarian, whatever you want to call it, wherever you want to put them. They land all over the spectrum of that. And they are pretty freaked out about his recent comments regarding Gaza. And they're like, I didn't vote for Trump to have us go back into the Middle East again. And I thought, he's not a perfect, conservative. He's not a perfect libertarian candidate. But I think with regards to international agreements and foreign policy, he's earned at least a little bit of the benefit of the doubt on these issues. I would be very disappointed if we went and were putting boots on the ground where we didn't have them before, or if we were, unless there was something like really crazy going on, but I doubt that. Or like, going in and occupying Gaza or something with U.S. troops. I'd be pretty disappointed with that. But I don't really think that he means to do it. Not that he won't if they don't follow through on coming to the table to make a deal. But remember, when he left office, Israel and the Palestinians and I think Iran were in talks to come up with some kind of a deal. And it all kind of fell apart under Biden. So I think that it's him kind of leveraging, once again, his unpredictability to get a bunch of countries that are not cooperating to play ball, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, do I think it's a good idea for the United States to do precisely and exactly what Donald Trump said? Yeah, we'll go into Gaza, we'll rebuild it, we'll buy it, we'll own it, and I guess maybe it'll turn into a big Trump resort. It'll be wonderful, the most beautiful golf courses you've ever seen, all that stuff. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, I think you have to take a breath. When Donald Trump says something, the media should actually use this as their MO. After Donald Trump says something, take a breath, let it sit for a bit, and think about what he said and why he may have said it. This could be one of those cases where, let's say you're Turkey or you're Jordan or Lebanon or anything. It's like suddenly, Donald Trump says, well, I guess we'll just buy it and rebuild it. And they must be thinking to themselves, wait a minute, you can do that? That's on the table? Gosh, maybe we should get involved here. Maybe we should do something here to help out instead of always just sitting on the sidelines and watching the world burn right next to their borders. So, it could be something like that. I don't know. The chances of us actually going through with all of this is very low. I hope it's very low. That's not something the United States should do. Donald Trump has never been a big fan of nation building, and this would be the craziest attempt at nation building ever in the history of the world. I guess since ancient Rome, but so I don't think that's going to happen. But again, I think you have to look at it in the context of what is he trying to accomplish? What kind of policies is he trying to reverse from the Biden years? And you might recall he had a pretty good record in brokering peace in the Middle East. The his Abraham Accords were pretty historic, and then the Biden administration came in and basically threw them in the garbage. So he wants to have a legacy of peace in the Middle East. I don't think setting up basically an American colony in Gaza is the way to accomplish it. So hopefully he sees the best of that.
All right. Well, we'll move on. Unfortunately, for our audience, we have lost our guest. We were having just too many technical difficulties. So you guys will have to suffer with just Jim and myself for today's show. So sorry about that, everybody. But we do have good topics that we do want to get to. And if Andy wants to pop in too, our producer.
Oh, God, we don't want that. No.
Well. Okay. So for topic 3, I want it to be pretty brief. It's just a follow-up on what Trump's appointees are up to. Burgum, who a lot of us were worried was going to be a little bit too cozy with radical environmentalists, is absolutely seeming to fall in line and advancing Trump's agenda rather than kind of the stuff that he was doing in his own state. From the National Review, we have Burgum announced Monday 6 orders designed to follow through on Trump's energy agenda by addressing the national energy emergency, unleashing American energy, rolling back regulation, lowering prices, ending bans on offshore drilling, and unleashing Alaska's resource potential. And I want to hop over to the Department of the Interior website again. Sorry, Andy, where he details this stuff. He lists a lot of great actions in the section on unleashing American energy. But here's the kicker that I want to pitch to you, Jim, real quick here. This comment down towards the end that says, ensuring that no federal funding is employed in a manner contrary to the principles set out above, unless required by law. So, Jim, yeah. I know we were all kind of dooming a little bit about Burgum as a pick when he eventually got picked, because he has been on the carbon capture and storage train. People in the state are not too happy with a little bit of some land grabs going on in the state for carbon capture pipelines. I really like this last bullet point, though, about ensuring that no federal funding is employed contrary to the kind of America First energy policies set out above. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room there. Yes. Okay, here's Sterling is in the chat, and he says that he can come in on this topic if we need to. Anyway, but I wanted you to comment on that idea, because I don't think I've seen this kind of a, I guess, wow, I totally lost the word I was looking for. Anyway, I've never seen something like this in a energy plan or in any kind of plan, really, from even other conservative Department of the Interior picks. So what do you think?
Yeah, I talk a lot to other climate realists. Of course, as a reminder, Sterling Burnett was in the chat. I'll be hosting, and he will be part of the panelists on the Climate Realism Show, which is every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 Central. So we'll see you on there tomorrow. But I'm along with Sterling and some other climate realists from different organizations, around the world. We had discussions about the picks that Donald Trump was making for these key energy and climate positions, and one of them being Burgum at Interior. And yeah, there was a lot of pushback. I don't like this guy. He could have done better than this. And again, I would caution, I would counsel remaining calm. Doug Burgum is going to be the Secretary of Interior. Donald Trump is the boss. There is not a single selection of no matter where they are in the federal government, of Donald Trump that is going to go off the reservation. Since we're talking about the Department of Interior, there's going to go off the reservation and do their own kind of freelance rogue energy policy. That's not going to happen with Doug Burgum. And like you pointed out, seeing that specific language in that order makes that pretty clear. So that's just great.
Yep. Okay, we've got Sterling here to come contribute to this. Sterling, you and I have a special distrust in general of Burgum, but he seems to be, like Jim said, he is following the boss. I was very impressed with the DOI's page. Now, that remains to be seen whether or not they actually do the stuff that they put on their nice website. But I am quite pleased with the direction that it's going already. And I did not see a single mention of carbon capture and storage on that plan. So we'll see.
Look, A, it's early days. B, I'm not quite as sure as Jim that he will follow orders all the time. But I'm pretty sure, as based on the previous Trump administration, that if he starts to stray too much from what Trump wants, he will no longer be Secretary of the Interior. Trump replaced him in the first term. He replaced his energy secretary in the first term. When EPA he went when they got too far off the script. Trump scrapped him. The other thing is, Burgum may be a very good soldier, right? If you remember the first George Bush, vice president under Reagan, he ran against Reagan as the Rockefeller wing, liberal wing of the Republican Party, the so-called business wing. But when he was Reagan's vice president, he was loyal. He carried out Reagan's wishes. He defended Reagan's policies. He talked a good conservative game. When he ran for president, he said, "Read my lips, no new taxes. They'll come again and they'll come again. No new taxes." He went back, he reverted back to who he was as soon as he was president of the United States. Well, Burgum may have higher aspirations. He may be loyal, and then he may change again. So I don't know. It's not just Burgum. It's, Lee Zeldin at EPA is making some good moves early on. Chris Wright has already said some great stuff that seemed to contradict some of the stuff during his testimony about climate change. Now he's not as worried about climate change as which he said was a real problem during his hearings. Well, I think he wanted to get in office, right? He was good before. The hearings gave me some pause, but now he's issuing the right kinds of statements. So hopefully they will follow Trump's lead when they have initiatives of their own, that they will be in line with the kinds of policies that Trump would endorse. Those policies, by the way, making America great again by making America energy dominant again.
Yep, and that's a major point that they talk about in the DOI website's first round of orders. One of the very interesting sections there is also on unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential, which is talking a lot about one, re-permitting areas that previously the Biden administration took offline for oil and gas and like minerals exploration. And also it reinstates Secretary's Order 3352, National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, to prioritize the prudent development of natural resources in Alaska and beyond to ensure the nation's geopolitical security. The Secretary directs an immediate review of all punitive restrictions that have targeted resource development in Alaska and requires the Interior Department to develop plans of action to carry out Trump's agenda. This is really good. Alaska has been really getting the short end of the stick on a lot of this mineral rights restrictions and leasing restrictions by the Biden administration, and before that by the Obama administration. So it's looking good for them. My concern with, or my little moderating concern, I guess, with these policies is that if they don't have the effect that we would like them to have quickly enough, that people might kind of turn on the America First energy stuff a little bit, which I wouldn't, because I think that this stuff is great. But the problem is that one of the things that has been hindering most of the oil and gas development in this country, other than the regulations themselves, is actually the unstable kind of environment that they're in right now. It's part of the reason why Keystone XL got canceled the last time. It's not necessarily just because the Biden administration paused it. They could have held out and said, we're going to, or canceled it rather. We're going to wait until the next administration and see if we can do that. But the costs of continuing to try to put in these major infrastructure projects with a whiplash every 4 years or 8 years potentially, where your entire project gets banned right away or all your permits are withdrawn right away. It makes it a very hostile environment to do work, and it's very difficult to get investors. So do you guys think that this stuff will be enough to give these companies hope so that they can embark on some of these bigger infrastructure projects, like opening up entirely new areas for exploration? I know that the previous administration made a lot of hay out of companies not using the leases that they had. And there's a lot of reasons why a company might not use the lease that they have, including they got the lease, they did a little exploration, they found that it wasn't as good as they needed it to be. But do you think that it'll be enough? Or are we going to have to figure out right as soon as possible a legislative path to make it so that the next administration can't just whiplash them again on this kind of policy?
Well, I'll weigh in for a second. First off, I don't think we need a new legislative path. Under Trump, midterm, late term, they passed look, Alaska has been getting screwed since 1980, when they implemented the Arctic, when they created whole cloth the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, taking a huge chunk of the state off the books. But as part of the law that did that, it said there shall be a portion of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the coastal plain, that shall be developed for energy. It specifically said that in the law. Every administration, every Republican administration has tried to develop it. Every Democrat administration has stifled it. But under Trump, for the first time ever, they passed a law specifically saying this area is open for business. And Trump issued the leases, but they were issued late in his term, and Biden got in and scrapped them. If they reissue those leases now, it will be developed by the time the next president takes office. It doesn't take 5 years, 4 years to, you'll do a little exploratory, but they already pretty much know that, the estimates are 9 billion barrels of oil right there in that little area. They'll get in there and do it if they're given the opportunity. The National Petroleum Reserve A, that's always been set aside for oil development. So if they start issuing those leases now, early in his administration, they'll be operating by the time the next administration comes in. Keystone, tricky, right? Multiple administrations, whiplash, like you say. Private parties pulled out. They don't want to bear the cost. But if a private party wanted to do it now, first, early in Trump's administration, there's only a small portion of the pipeline, that still remains to be built. They could build that in 3 years. They could build it in less than 3 years if they get the permits now, if someone joins it now, because the states have already issued their permits. All they need is the federal government to say, go ahead, and a private partner to build the thing. The problem was they didn't, even after Trump issued the permits, at the time, Nebraska hadn't issued its permits. It was still going through court cases. Well, that's all been settled. So I think you could get it built now before the next administration. And of course, the next administration, I'm not saying it's going to be a Vance, but if it is someone like Vance, I see them continuing Trump's policies. So if the next administration comes in and it's not someone like Vance, there could be some whiplash. But even Biden, to my knowledge, did not go back, look at things that were already built and say, we're ripping them out.
Right. Exactly. Right?
Well, they say we won't permit any new ones. We'll slow walk current permits. We won't issue new leases, but they didn't go back and say, okay, we're taking your wells out, operating wells. That didn't happen. So if they get them built fast, you don't have the issue.
Well, thank you very much, Sterling. We're going to move on to our main topic now, which is probably the one that we've all been looking forward to talking about. It's very exciting, very fun. The angst has been incredible. Headed up by Elon Musk, DOGE is now on patrol. With a team of young and eager engineers, DOGE is performing audits of various federal agencies, and funding for USAID has been frozen. And the fallout has been really something to behold. So Vox certainly doesn't like it in this article. And you guys are going to enjoy this. Things that just a few years ago would have been thought impossible in the American system of government are now happening. Donald Trump is asserting the president's power to remake the executive branch as he sees fit, empowering Elon Musk to push aside civil servants, wind down entire agencies, and generally strike terror into the federal workforce. Musk's effort seems to be willfully heedless of laws against firing certain employees and spending requirements from Congress, and outside experts have argued that much of what he's doing seems blatantly illegal. He's doing it anyway. Guys, is this a good idea? Should we be letting the scary people from outside of the government audit the government? Isn't it usually the case that the government investigates itself so that it can find itself innocent? Your comments, please. Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, well, this is, like I said, every day is Christmas and every night is New Year's Eve. Thanks, Sade. This is something that, Vox is worried. The right people, that's the thing to look out for here. The right people are upset or panicked right now. And we are seeing something that we have never seen. I'm 54 years old. I'm seeing something that I've never seen in my lifetime. I believe Sterling is around my age, might be a couple of years younger or older. But there's something, actually, I meant to mention this before. Remember when Donald Trump came into office, one of the first things he did was he said, all right, I'm going to send this out to all federal employees. On a date a week from now, you have a chance to take 8-month severance and can keep the benefits you've earned, which are the most generous benefits in the Western world, maybe, as being a federal employee for your retirement and your pension. And you can go. You can just go on to your life's work, but it's going to be something else. It's not going to be wherever you're working now in the federal government. Today is the deadline to take that deal. Again, Donald Trump's the deal maker, loves making a deal. And this is the deal he has for the American people. And that is, he is going to offer a blanket golden parachute exit package for all federal employees. Yesterday alone, I think the number went up to 40,000 are taking that deal. In our lifetimes, we have never experienced the federal government shrink in size, not even a little. Every day, every month, the government gets bigger. The number of people working for the federal government gets bigger. The amount of money they spend gets larger. Just yesterday, 40,000 people decided to take this deal of a lifetime from Donald Trump. And for the first time in the life of anybody listening to this podcast, including somebody who is 90 years old, just experienced something quietly in the background that has never happened in American history. And that is the government actually getting smaller. This was an innovative, brilliant idea from Elon Musk. And he's talked about it on the campaign trail when he was walking, when he was out there with Donald Trump and campaigning for Trump. He said, yeah, we're going to reduce the size of government. No, we mean it. It's going to happen. And people would ask him, well, what about those, they have jobs, they have kids, they have careers. You can't just throw them out on the street. And he goes, of course, we're not going to do that. We're going to offer everybody severance. And it'll be a very generous severance. 8 months is pretty darn generous. And then they can just go off, do something else with their life, or they can just retire early, whatever they want. But that's the way to do it. It's just amazing. It's so simple. How much money the American taxpayer is going to save just by reducing the workforce in that method, where you just pay them for 8 months and let them walk off and go open up a ice cream shop or something in Joe Biden's neighborhood so that it'll always be busy.
Make them taxpayers rather than tax drainers.
Yeah, that's right. And so this is happening. And so, yes, it's also a great idea to have, Elon Musk come in and get these, weaponized autists on their computers doing an audit of things like USAID. And it's really, revelatory here. We're seeing, there's Doge. That's a great image of Doge. But now the American people are actually seeing for the first time what their government's actually kind of up to. You know, we've talked about this, I think, on this podcast and maybe on the Climate Realism show on Fridays. You know, the Overton window of what's politically and culturally possible tends to just move a little bit at a time, right? Donald Trump has grabbed that Overton window and threw it over to where he wants to look through. And everybody now has to look at that too. And it's way farther to the right than it used to be. So we're actually having national conversations about, you know, wasteful federal spending. And people are interested in it. And it's actually kind of entertaining the way it's all coming about. And it's coming about so fast. It's like a reality show going on in Washington, D.C. So the title of this podcast today is DOGE breaking Washington or fixing it? And it's both. I embrace the power of both because it's necessary. You have to break Washington in order to fix it. And so it's really wonderful to see. And if Vox is upset, if the federal worker unions are upset, if the likes of the leftist Democrats are out in front of shouting out in front of the State Department are upset, that's all fantastic positive signs.
Yeah, that's just icing.
Right. I guess I have a little bit more mixed feelings about DOGE. 40,000 workers. My first thought is, well, that's a good start.
Yeah, I mean, it still matters.
You know, now it's a lot of money, right? You're paying them up front, 8 months salary, but what you save over time, tremendous amounts. And more importantly, it's not just the money that you save paying these people and their you no longer continue to pay into their retirements. You no longer continue to pay for their health care. The money you save over time there is good. But what's even more important is fewer regulators making regulations, telling American people how they can live. All good. And that wasn't a mandate from DOGE. What concerns me about DOGE is that it doesn't have the sanction of law, and it doesn't have the modest restraints that we put on agencies. I'm not sure I want DOGE in the Treasury's computers. Sorry, I'm not sure I want them in the Treasury's computers. I'm certainly not sure I want them. He can offer a billion ideas, and most of them will be good ideas, and they should implement them. But he shouldn't be running government. No one elected him.
Come on,
no one
man.
voted for him. And I don't want him doing it. I don't want any dictator. I don't want any person having that kind of power. Not even the president. We have a constitution.
Oh, Sterling. All right, we're going to kick you off the show. You're only supposed to come here and talk about energy. There, you know what you're talking about. Get out of here with this stuff. He's not a dictator. He's a consultant to the president. The president's making these decisions. These are presidential policies, and he has the power to give a
consultants
package
going to Treasury and hack their computers. Consultants don't do that. In fact, when other consultants have tried to do that, they've been prosecuted. When other consultants have gone into agencies that they don't have the right to be into by law, they've been prosecuted. It's called hacking. He doesn't have that right.
It's not hacking. It's not hacking when you're given authority to do it.
Well, the problem is the president, it's not clear to me, has the authority to send them into Treasury and say, turn over your computers to this outside agency.
Sterling, who runs the Treasury Department?
You mean ultimately? Of course, the president. But the president's constrained by laws that created the Treasury Department.
So who can tell the Treasury Department to conduct an audit and let it be from an outside agency so it can be trusted? Because your answer would be nobody.
No,
that's not a good answer.
Not my answer. My answer is you go through the federal contracting procedures. There's laws in place for how you pick contractors for things, and you do it. If they want to hire Elon Musk and his group as contractors, go through the process, get it done, and then give him the power. That's not what they did.
Okay, great. Then it gives the corrupt deep staters who have ruined this country all the time they need and the fair warning to cover their tracks or to get more corruption done before they're fired. I'm sorry, I'm not that upset. You know, Elon Musk's, he is the greatest, he's the greatest, the Silicon Valley slogan is move fast and break things. Nobody has moved faster and broke more things in a good way than Elon Musk. And now he's being sicked on the worst of the United States, which is our federal government. And he's moving fast and he's breaking things and he's exposing corruption and he's going to help change this country. If you think people should be arrested for that in a few weeks, I'm fine with that. And then Trump will pardon him and we'll move on with our lives and have a better government that works out okay.
Well,
so
that may be the answer. The problem is, Jim, what I believe in, as flawed as it is a nation of laws, not men. A nation of, we set laws, they're passed duly by Congress, they are supposed to be implemented by the president, not ignored by the president. And I want to apply that to every president, even Trump, who I'm loving what he's doing. But given one unelected man, that kind of power concerns me. And so it's not just the Treasury. Like I said, the ideas, furloughing, firing, look, you didn't mention it. What, 40,000 people took the, so far, we don't know how many will sign up for today, are taking the payout, right? But thousands more can just be fired with no payout because under rules passed by Biden, under laws passed under Biden, your first 2 years are probationary and probationaries can be fired without benefits or pay. Well, that's thousands. People at the EPA, I was reading stories about today, they're just going to be gone. So
they should have took the deal. They have until the end of the day.
No. They don't get the deal. They don't qualify for the deal.
Oh well.
In the probationary period, 2 years. I'm not crying. I'm just saying a lot of things can come from this, but it didn't come from Musk having power to do it. Musk came up with an idea. They implemented his idea, and it's paying off. Okay, I'm all in favor.
All right.
Thank you guys so much. Isn't it so fun to have differing opinions on these issues? Thank you guys so much. Okay.
It's always very interesting to have somebody who's right and somebody who's wrong, and then people can, that's the enjoyable part.
I couldn't agree more, Jim, and I'm glad you could be my foil as the wrong.
Okay. So I want to dig into a little bit into what we would call rage bait on USAID and what we actually have been having our tax dollars spent on. And I want to start with a tweet. And I want to start with this tweet because we're going to read it and see how ridiculous and funny it is. And then we're going to look at the actual things that we're spending money on. And you're going to realize that this is not much of a parody, actually. So this is a great tweet from Jeff Putnam, who I believe is a science fiction writer. And he says, "Just got the word that I've been let go after USAID was defunded. My organization was responsible for coordinating the National Task Force for Two-Spirit Indigenous Climate Grief Storytelling, which provided decolonized safe spaces for marginalized voices to process their eco-anxiety through interpretive dance and hand-woven poetry scrolls, and the Federal Bureau of Decolonized Dog Names, ensuring that pet owners chose names for their dogs that honored indigenous traditions while dismantling Western canine linguistic oppression. These cuts are ruining lives."
Oh, my brain hurts.
All right. So we have read this, and this is a funny joke, right? Now, I'm going to list from Town Hall some of the stuff that USAID has actually been using our money for, which includes sex change procedures in Guatemala. The House Foreign Affairs Committee's new chairman released a report Tuesday exposing frivolous DEI-related expenses. Among them, $1 million went towards supporting French-speaking LGBTQ+ groups in West and Central Africa. $3.3 million was blown on normalizing being LGBTQ in the Caribbean. $425,600 helped Indonesian coffee companies become more climate and gender friendly. They spent $1.5 million aimed at empowering women to adapt to climate change in northern Kenya. And this one's not so funny. USAID spent money to buy 38,000 meals for Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. So all that and more. These things sound like they would also be jokes along the lines of the one that was posted on X there. But they are not jokes, and they get a lot worse than the few that I listed. A lot more offensive too, especially with regards to how much money USAID is pouring into groups that are either directly or indirectly associated with terror organizations. It's pretty incredible. A lot of people have been pointing out that Democrats and also some of the Republicans that like this kind of spending, and there are a lot of them that like this stuff, even some that probably benefit from it in one way or another, who will say, why are you going after all these little pittances? 1.5 million here, 10 million there. It's not a really big deal. And it's like killing one mosquito when you're being swarmed by a million of them. It doesn't make a difference. But then when you do what we've done here, what Trump has done here, and freeze USAID, which is like spraying yourself down in DDT and killing all the mosquitoes at once so that you can look at them and figure out which ones were bad. The sane people freak out and they say, this is terrible. Why would you be cutting all of this? There's all these important things that this is going to. I mean, what about the indigenous basket weaving eco-anxiety groups, So, I mean, have you guys seen some of that the way I have? And how bad do you not feel for them?
I guess I would start off by reading the mission of USAID. They were established to provide disaster relief, poverty relief, technical cooperation on global issues, bilateral interest, and socioeconomic development. Not a single one there's nothing about arts. There's nothing about culture. There's nothing about gender or sex. It's not their mission. They don't have that in their mission. And not a single one of the things that you named falls under their mission. So we never should have been funding it. Now, of course, I'd go back even farther. Having read my Constitution, I don't see where the federal government has delegated the authority to start sending taxpayer money overseas for anything. If people want to give money to poor people in other countries, all for it. Love charity. They shouldn't be taking it from my pocket forcefully and sending it to the Taliban or even to people in Nigeria. If I want to fund people in Nigeria, my business. I've read the Constitution. That power was not delegated to the federal government.
There's a reason, and we talked about this, and Linnea didn't want me to go any farther on it because we wanted to save it for the end of the show. But the drop there in the theme video was of Chuck Schumer joining all these other Democrats out in front of the State Department. Alexander Vindman was there in front of the USAID building, and we will win, and all this other stuff, all this protesting. It's really interesting that this is the hill they want to die on. I mean, one of the wonderful things about what's happened in the last, is it only been 3 weeks Trump's been president? Are we past the 3-week mark yet? It is so much, I can't keep track of it. But the great thing about the flood to zone strategy is that there's so many things happening all at once that the left can't get organized and focus on one thing. And so they've decided to focus on this. This is the hill they're now going to dig in and have a fight about. USAID. Again, most Americans had never even heard of that agency about 20 minutes ago. A lot of our listeners and viewers on YouTube actually have, because I've seen in the comments in the chat that if you're familiar with Mike Benz, who is a former intelligence community person who has a wonderful podcast and a great X account, you should follow him there. He was interviewed, I think, for 3 hours or 4 hours by Joe Rogan just a few months ago, and he knows what he's talking about. And USAID, in its worst actions, is basically a cutout and kind of the money bags for a lot of covert operations, CIA ops around the world, that it's used to fund color revolutions, is used to foment unrest in the streets, to overthrow a government. Like, say, I don't know, maybe this happened in Ukraine. We don't know. There will be investigations about it, and we will find out. But also then there's the silly stuff that USAID does. It's just funny to see these people out in front of that building protesting. They're very upset. But I don't think you're going to see people take a knee at the Super Bowl over the death of a transgender opera in Colombia. That's not going to be funded anymore. Or the end of a queer feminist discourse in Albania, or DEI seminars in Scotland. Those are what? That's right. Those are all things that were being funded as well. So USAID is where they're going to fight. And they picked a really poor place because
That's right.
this, even though it's just a smidgen of the budget, and that, that whole idea that, there's a million mosquitoes stinging you. Why do you care about this one? Why'd you kill that one? It's like, because I could, and I got to start somewhere. And that's where this stuff is going to go. 40,000 people taking the deal from Donald Trump to retire early and get their severance and keep their pensions is a smidge. What is it? 2 million federal employees? It's nothing. It's one mosquito out of 1,000, but at least it's one, and it's a start. And soon maybe it'll be a reasonable place, and there won't be so many mosquitoes that you're just covered in bites. USAID is perfect for this because it is absurd. And then, of course, there's the idea that USAID and other federal funds have been propping up publications like Politico. $8 million. Now, they clarified that we did not get $8 million of direct subsidies to our newspaper, to keep it, our publication, to keep it going. No, they didn't. They got they got almost the entire federal government to pay each individual person a very expensive subscription for Politico Pro. I believe it's thousands of dollars a year to get Politico Pro. Most Americans, normal Americans, wouldn't pay that because it's not worth it. But even, I think, the EPA, or was it NOAA, paid for $500,000 worth of subscriptions last year to Politico. Why the hell does NOAA need to spend $500,000 to Politico? This is like,
it says it in the title, Jim. Politico. Right. That has nothing to do with science.
Right. It has nothing to do with science. Yeah. But and then the AP also gets a lot of money this way through government purchases of their products. And so basically the federal government is propping up the legacy media, which has done nothing but support the federal government and everything it has ever done, and work as a propaganda arm for the Biden regime, or for the deep state at all times. And again, for Politico and all these people saying like, no, we're not getting government money. That's as believable, it's actually as laughable as Oprah Winfrey saying, no, Kamala Harris did not pay me $1 million for that town hall that we did. She paid my production company, though. So you're still getting paid, Oprah. It's the same damn thing. You're not fooling anybody. And, and as we're going to learn more and more as the weeks and months ahead, go forward, is that USAID is probably it funds so many leftist non-government organizations, leftist nonprofits, that they use it as a money laundering scheme, that you kind of contract with the government, with USAID, to give your NGO that is, to end hunger or something like that. And then, we're going to end hunger in Africa. But, you and your vice president and this other executive and the board of directors, they all get 6-figure salaries. And about 10% of the money that you get from government actually makes it to buying a bag of rice in Africa. And multiply that now by thousands. And that's why they picked a bad hill to fight on, because it might be the hill they die on.
I agree with you on that, Jim. I agree with you on that. And I would add one thing. They ask why go after this piddling amount of money, right? It's a backwater to some extent of government funding. Now, mind you, I would take that backwater in my bank account. $60 billion, I think, is what they had last year. But it is a relatively small amount. So is what we spend on NPR, the arts, National Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and National Endowment for the Arts, the money that we spend there. They're all small things, but small things add up. And, I don't have many good things to say about Mao, but I believe at least it's attributed to him to say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You got to start somewhere.
Right.
And this is sort of the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. And I want to point out, too, another interesting, convenient thing that got a little bit of money, or a lot of bit of money, from USAID was EcoHealth Alliance. And if you guys recognize that name, it might be tickling a little remember spark in the back of your head. That is the Wuhan lab collaborating organization that was part of the emerging pandemic threats program. They actually had their fingers in some of the testing and exposure of coronaviruses on lab animals. And they say that USAID did not fund any work that tried to do gain of function research, but they did fund a group that does do gain of function research. They just didn't market for that particular use. So, I mean, it's all going to the same organization, right? So they can use this money over here for, the specific check that USAID writes them or whatever, they can use for whatever little project that they claim that they are using it for, but it frees them up to use the other money to do the other stuff that they're doing. That's the little sneaky kind of framing that I've seen Democrats use a lot when it comes to either the stuff around gain of function research or some of the times when the US government has indirectly funded terrorist cells. They'll say, well, we didn't fund them, buying weapons or whatever. We just funded them getting food or getting water infrastructure projects or whatever. It's like, well, what you're doing is you're freeing up their funds to go do the bad stuff. Obviously, that's right. It's so obvious, but I don't know who that line works on, but it's working on somebody, or at least they think it's working on somebody.
Yeah, money is fungible, right? I mean, that's kind of the way its purpose is that way. And actually, this morning I was thinking of that line by Judd Hirsch's character in Independence Day, when he gets to Area 51 and they look at all this, this alien technology stuff they've been working on for 40 years, and he's like, even the president asked, how are we affording all this stuff? And he goes, you don't think it actually costs $7,000 for a hammer? So it's money laundering. And this is money laundering for for the left. It's a huge scam and a slush fund. Yeah. That's why you have to, only a stuck pig will squeal. They're this upset because this is very dangerous to their very existence. I know it's just a coincidence that Politico missed a payroll because it was a glitch at exactly the same time the money from USAID and their subscriptions all got cut off. Complete coincidence.
Complete coincidence. You're right.
But a lot of these, and I'm really sensitive about this. Look, the Heartland Institute, we are a nonprofit organization. We are a 501c3. We've been around for 40 years. We have never taken a dime of public money. There are other nonprofits that are 501c3s that take tons of money from the government. In fact, most of those are almost all of them. I actually don't even know of a nonprofit think tank like the Heartland Institute that's on the right that has ever taken any government money. It's kind of against our principles. It's not what we do. We're not for that. But I can't, but these left-wing organizations are swimming in government money from agencies like USAID. And without it, they can't survive at all. They don't really have a big base of donors that actually support what they're doing because it's not a real charity. It's not actually a real organization. It doesn't do what it says it wants to do. It doesn't do what's in its charter or its title. It's a money laundering operation, and there's a revolving door between governments and NGOs, not just the United States, but globally. It's all a giant scam. And that's what's going to be exposed. And that's what, you got to think that's why they're going to fight on this hill, because it's everything. It's all their money. Without this, they're dead as an organization. So of course they're going to fight for it. But the funny thing is, like I said, no one's going to be taking a knee. This isn't Black Lives Matter. This isn't George Floyd. This isn't something that's actually that the most American people would be empathetic about and be upset about. No one's going to be taking a knee because of USAID. They're just not. And so the public's not going to be on their side. I think they're screwed. This could be the beginning of the end.
The best example I can think of how the left has played the right like a drum for decades, how they played this game so successfully is Planned Parenthood.
Yep.
Regardless of how you stand on abortion, it has been U.S. law that the U.S. government money cannot fund abortions. The Hyde Amendment, very specific. Law. It's the law. And Planned Parenthood says every time they want to cut off funds, Planned Parenthood, no. We're a women's health organization. We've got to support women's health. We don't spend a dime of the money the federal government, the hundreds of millions of dollars the federal government gives us every year on abortions. We give it to women's health. Well, like you say, funds are fungible. What if all those donations that they gave, that were given to them, not from the federal government, but private donations, because they get a lot of money from private parties, from other foundations that they raise money on, what if they had to be spread across all the women's health issues, as opposed to they can devote all that to abortions and just use the federal government money for women's health? They have played the government like a drum. And as soon as that money is cut off, they'll actually start focusing on women's health, my suspicion is.
Well, I thank you guys very much. I'm sorry I'm going to have to cut us off. I think we've gone quite a bit over, but I knew that this topic was going to be exciting. So we kind of tried to rush into it, and then we slowed down to try and get our guest back, and then we had to rush again. So a little bit of a time issue, but I'm glad you guys all stuck around for us going late. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in. We are live every single week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, X, YouTube, Facebook, pretty much anywhere that is streaming. For audio listeners, please rate us well on whatever service you're using. Leave a review. That'll help us to kind of climb the ranks there. And then, thanks to our special guest, Phil Kerpen, who was not able to join us after all. But Sterling, you are our second special guest. Where can the audience find your work? And do you have anything to plug this week, or how can they support you?
Just go sign up for Climate Change Weekly and watch us all tomorrow when we do something like this again on the Climate Realism live stream.
Yep, that's right. And then, Jim, anything to plug this week?
You can follow me on X at @JLakely. You can follow the organization on X at Heartland Inst. Always visit heartland.org, and we will see you tomorrow, Friday, where I will host and Sterling will be a panelist. And I promise we won't disagree.
It's the first time I've ever disagreed with anybody.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
I know. It's so rare.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next week.